Hey, David Brewster here with a new episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Surf Rock, and I've had some requests to feature some surf rock and surf guitar music. Definitely a very interesting and inspiring, form of music. It first appeared somewhere around 1958 and then continued full force until about 1964, which is also the same time the Beatles appeared on the scene. And it's interesting that most, surf rock fans kind of abandoned the style after the Beatles. At first everybody wanted to be the Beach Boys, and then eventually they wanted to be the Beatles. And definitely a very interesting style, and I've done a lot of research and a deep dive, really listening to some different groups and different songs. And this episode is going to basically just be a classic look at, classic surf rock from the 60s. And there's tons of, great bands and guitarists and songs. Definitely most people think of Dick Dale, definitely the king of surf guitar. But here's an image with some legendary surf rock and surf guitar heroes. So while doing the research and listening to music and really checking out the history of surf rock, I already knew the king of surf guitar, Dick Dale, but I didn't realize there's a queen of surf guitar. Kathy Marshall is her name, and Dick Dale is the one that gave her that nickname. And I'm currently trying to dig up as much information about Kathy as possible. I think that's so cool, but here's an image with the king and queen of surf guitar. As far as the artists that I'm going to feature in this episode, I did do a deep dive as far as the research and putting this together, and we are going to hit some lesser known, kind of obscure artists. There are some famous ones too, though, the Ventures and the Sentinels, but I did purposely seek out surf guitar songs where you hear that real twangy surf kind of sound. And keep in mind, surf guitar does kind of blur between twang and rockabilly too. So just a heads up, but here's some of the artists that are going to be featured in this episode. So there are the artists I'm going to feature in this episode, and here are the album covers with the songs that I pulled from each of those artists. And there are 6 examples in this episode. There's 6 album covers right here from 6 different artists. But keep in mind, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more where this came from. But I'm really just sharing this, like if you get into this and you really like it, this way you can kind of dive deeper. So here we go. All right, with the opening, that's the Astronauts with Banzai Pipeline. Definitely a very cool surf rock guitar song. And there's 2 guitars, and I was using the MXR clone looper there to kind of help me out with both parts. And that first part playing the chords, that's basically a B flat major over F. Doing something like that. And you hear that really springy reverb. That's a big part of surf guitar music. And in my opinion, it doesn't really matter what brand guitar or amp or whatever you have, but you do need a bar, I feel, especially when you start hearing like a ringing chord and the bar kind of being dipped and manipulated. And also that essential reverb. You need that really big, kind of messy reverb like that. And honestly, back in the day, back in the 60s, it was a Fender reverb unit that they would hook up to like maybe a Fender Bassman or something, and that's how they got that super spacey reverb sound, like this. So after that chord part's introduced, eventually this lead part comes in. It's just based around B minor pentatonic, and I believe he's actually picking really close to the bridge because it has that thin, bright kind of sound. Like that. And then let me do it again. After you repeat that twice, you're going to basically move up to this G flat 9 to an F9 right there. And then you have some lead licks right there. You're actually raking in, I think like B flat minor pentatonic box right there. And you're doing this rake. It's kind of a percussive rake, and you're kind of spelling out the top part of that arpeggio right there, that B flat minor, like that. And then you want to grab like a little pentatonic lick right there. So that G flat 9, F9, the raked minor pentatonic lick, and then then started with that G flat 9 again, F9, and then another pentatonic bass lick. And then right there I just kind of ended it, at the end. It actually goes back to that riff again. Anyway, but check out that song. It's actually really cool. It's fun to play. It's not hard to play at all, but it's really fun to play along with, and it definitely gives you that surf rock guitar sound. Really cool. Okay, next up's The Ventures with 11th Hour, and this is from the album Guitar Genius of The Ventures, which is on the wall right there. Somehow I magically tracked that album down. And this is really cool. It's technically 2 guitars, but it's spaced out and really slow where you can actually play it on one guitar. It does have the springy kind of reverb and also tremolo too, but 11th Hour is something like this. Something like that. So it's basically, really shaky and reverby, with the tremolo and reverb effects. But you're going to start with this E minor, just strum it, dip your bar about a half step, like that. And then you're just spelling out that B, G to E, like the minor, triad, or arpeggio, like that. And right there, go to A minor and dip your bar a half step. And then you're going to spell out this minor triad right there, that E, C to A right there for A minor. And then go back to E minor. Right there, a little bit of B7. And then it's the open A string to that G to F sharp. And then it's G, F sharp to E. Going back to that E minor chord. So it's not really that hard to play. I like the bar dips, the crazy tremolo, and it just has that kind of laid-back surf sound. Really cool. Next up's the song The Hearse by Al Casey, and definitely Al Casey was a legendary, surf rock guitarist, but I think his, spotlight was kind of overshadowed a little bit by Dick Dale. Definitely Dick Dale kind of hogged the surf rock, and surf guitar spotlight. But definitely The Hearse, when you hear it, there's so much noisy, springy reverb going on, especially in the beginning. It's just this constant E5 at the start. And listen to the song. That part is so noisy and springy. It's really almost distracting, where it's like, wow, that's a lot of reverb. But something like that. Then you hear this really simple, single note melody. That F sharp E to D right there. Do that twice in a row and then end with a bar dip to E minor. Like that. And then do that melody again. And the second time you're going to do harmonics up here. Almost sounds like a doorbell or something right there. And then you've got something like that. So it's not really hard to play. It just sounds very surf rock, esque, I guess. But with that first part like that, and you just go right in the melody. Those bar dips on chords. That sounds so cool. Next up's the Sentinels with Latina, and this is really interesting. You're doing something like this. interesting, and tons of reverb, once again, kind of spelling out these partial chords. That's like a C sharp minor over G sharp right there. And then it moves to A major, like the A major triad right there. And you hear a weird warble with the bar right there, and then it's an A sharp diminished implied. And right there it's like E over G sharp, a little bit of bar action. A backward rake on this F over A, and then that G over B, F over A, and then back to that E over G sharp, and then end on that F over A right there. So it's like those 70s, you know, kind of chord inversions that popped up in the 70s a lot. Keep in mind this is back in the early 60s, but we're doing that. And then right there, it's like a little part of F sharp minor kind of being spelled out. And then right there, a little part of D minor. And then right there, you're going to slide that D minor to C sharp minor, and then you kind of exaggerate it. Like that. Next up, this is the song Midnight Run from the Superstocks. This is also a classic surf rock guitar song. Very, very cool. Two guitars. The first guitar is doing this. You know, something like that. So it's like a little part of D minor right there, just back and forth and palm muted. Part of A5 the same way. Go back to D minor again. Then you're almost doing like this Spanish kind of flamenco sounding thing. You know, that E5, F5, G5, F5, back to E5 again. The MXR clone looper again to help me out. So here's guitar 1 and guitar 2 together, like this. You know, something like that. So right there when the first guitar is doing that D minor, you hear the second guitar kind of spell out this little melody like a D minor 6 implied. You're reaching up and grabbing that B note right there. And then that D minor 6 is going to change to A minor 9, like that. And keep in mind that's happening when it goes to that A5, right? Then when the chords go back to D minor, you want to repeat that D minor 6 thing. And then when it does the power chords, that kind of Spanish guitar sounding thing, you're going to do the upper chords like that, like E, F, and G. And then a little bar, you know, at the end there. But check that song out. It's actually really cool, and the Superstocks were definitely legendary surf rock bands, and that's a cool one. All right, last but not least, I saved the best for last. This is the Lively Ones with Surf Rider, definitely a classic surf rock song. This is really, really cool. Something like this. So really cool. This first part kind of reminds me of a Beatles riff, but this was technically before the Beatles. But so it's kind of like A7. And right there you want to slide down and do it again in G7 right there. Slide slide that down to F and do it again in F. And right here, this is super cool. So you're literally getting that, you know, kind of bar dipped low E. You're just dipping it down like a half step. Doing that kind of thing, but it's with the bar on the low E. And then walk down this E, D, C sharp to B. Right, like that. And right there, you're basically playing with A minor. Right? Kind of like an A minor melody right there. Then it goes to F. There, spell out like a little part of E major, and then right there slide into that E on the B string there on the 5th fret, the high E twice, and then come down E minor pentatonic there, right? So like that. A minor, bar dip, a higher A minor strummed, and then just end on E major, right there. Definitely really, really cool song, and I just love that kind of classic surf rock sound. So cool. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with this look at the chords of surf rock. Definitely a very interesting distraction for me. This kind of just came out of nowhere, and I started kind of playing with it and listening to it, and then the next thing I knew, I was dialing up, you know, surf rock tones and diving into the history and stuff, and uncovered, you know, people like Kathy Marshall and stuff, and it was like, wow, I had no idea. I mean, I had some idea. I knew Dick Dale and the Ventures and some of this stuff, but really diving in and kind of doing a deeper dive, pun not intended, but I guess there is a pun there since we're talking about surf rock. But I did this bigger dive into the music, and it really just inspired me, where I thought, man, I've never really played some of this stuff before. A little bit of it. But I've never really, you know, did a deep dive into surf rock and surf guitar. So cool. So definitely there's a lot more where this came from, like I mentioned earlier. And depending on the feedback and the response from this, I can definitely do a part 2 and probably a part 3 and a part 10 or whatever. Because there's a lot more surf rock music and bands than I realized. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.